Today, I got this fantastic package in the post, a delivery of David Keane's Connemara oysters. Thrilled to take this one. I've really missed them since we've been closed. David's oysters are absolutely gorgeous all the way from Connemara. Beautiful, deep shell, really retains an awful lot of moisture in there. And today, I'm going to show you how to do them in 3 different ways. And the 3 things that we are going to do with the oysters today is a very quick oyster tempura. We're going to serve that with a little garlic mayo. We're going to use some beautiful wild garlic that we made earlier on, and we're going to garnish it with some wild garlic flowers. We're going to do a very Asian sort of vibe oyster with really sort of sushi kind of flavors going on in it, and we're also going to do the really classic oysters Rockefeller. But the first thing I want to do is make use of this seaweed that's been holding them all nice and level while they're being delivered and keeping them all nice and moist in the package. It's not for eating, but if I pop it into some boiling water, make it really green, I can use it to garnish up the plate and make everything look nice and pretty. So let's do that first. So we're just going to put it into some really hot water just for a couple of seconds. And if you get in there nice and close, you'll see how it starts to change colour in the heat. You can see the difference between the one out of the heat and the one in the heat, how green it comes up. And it's good to give it a quick wash as well. So we can use this to put onto the plate and it'll keep all the oysters level as we present them. So it takes a couple of seconds and then we'll pop it into some cold water just to refresh it again. Now you can really see the difference between the 2 seaweeds once they've been blanched. It just brings back that colour, and then that allows us then just to be able to lay out our oysters, keeping them nice and level on the plate. And for this, I'm going to do a dozen oysters, but we're going to do 3 different flavours, so 4 of each flavour. It'd be perfect starter. So probably the one thing that people struggle with the oysters is opening them, but actually it's really quick and simple thing to do once you get the hang of it. So what we're looking for is firstly is a good oyster knife, and this point of the oyster here at the end of the shell, and inside there is that little sort of catch that just keeps that shell open. So what we're going to do is just mind our hands by sticking the oyster in between a cloth, making sure it doesn't slip away from us. Stick the knife in under the top of that shell, push down until we hear that little pop, and not until we hear that pop do we start to lever it. That's how we'll end up breaking our knives. But once we've heard the pop, we can lever it open. And at this point then we want to just make sure that the sharper side of the knife is turned upwards towards the top of the shell. So we can run it along the top and free the oyster up at the top without wasting any. Then lift that shell off. The next part is just if there's a little bit of shell there, just to remove it so it doesn't get in the way later. And then we're going to go underneath the oyster nice and gently, just freeing it from the sides. And this muscle here then needs to be freed from the shell, and we just scrape along, releasing it, making sure we get it all up, and then turn the oyster over, which makes a lovely presentation side. Once we have them all open then, we'll get started with the first one. What I want to do is to make a really classic oysters Rockefeller. It is actually a really simple thing to do, but there are 2 little bit tricky things that we need to do. So I've already made some hollandaise sauce, and I've already wilted down some spinach with a little garlic, a little shallot and a little nutmeg. Now to see exactly how to make the hollandaise and the wilted spinach, check out one of our other videos which you'll find on the Soul or the Fire Facebook pages or our IGTV channels, and where we did our eggs benedict, and that's the perfect hollandaise sauce and wilted spinach to go with our Rockefeller. So the first thing we're going to do to the oysters is just pop 4 of them into a little pot, and we're going to poach them very lightly, and just until they start to plump up and start to warm through. while they're poaching lightly, we're just going to get our 4 shells ready to go into the grill. So I've got this wilted spinach. Make sure it's sort of warm. It doesn't have to be hot, but a little bit warm, because it won't get much more heating under the grill. Put a little bit of spinach at the bottom of each one of the shells. And now we can see our oysters are just starting to plump up. So they're cooked, they're ready. And we're just going to lift them out and pop them again, just making sure the presentation side is the right way around. Just makes everything look that little bit prettier. Got a spoon, nice teaspoon of hollandaise across the top of that, across each one, and then we've got a really hot grill ready to just pop them under just before we're ready to serve. Now the next thing we're going to do is our tempura. So we've got a nice little bit of tempura batter. It's ice cold, ready to go, and a little bit of flour. So I'm just going to take out the oyster, pop it into the flour first. Give it a nice little coating in there. And then we'll pop it into our batter. And then that's ready to deep fry, again, just before we serve. Now to go with the tempura, I've got a little bit of mayo, and I'm going to just take a small bit of the wild garlic puree that we made earlier on. Just a small bit. So it's like we're making a garlic mayo, garlic aioli. But lovely colours, and it's kind of nice seaweedy sort of colour to it, isn't it? And what we're going to do is just put a small dollop of that into each of our tempura shells. And now we're going to make our little sort of sushi flavour. This is absolutely gorgeous. This is, I think, probably my favourite way to eat an oyster, other than just having it nice and fresh. All we want is to have a couple of nice little rings of spring onion, just a few, nothing crazy. And then I've got some pickled ginger. So these are flavours exactly like you'd have in sushi. And I'm just going to get that pickled ginger just really fine. A little shred. Because we don't need too much on each oyster. And then I'm going to take some wasabi paste. Just a little tiny squeeze. Depending on how hot you like it. And then I've got some sushi soy, so it's a little less salty than normal soy sauce. And I'm just going to mix the two of those together, the wasabi and the soy sauce. I'm just going to put a little teaspoon of that, making sure I've got some wasabi in each piece on top of our fresh raw oyster. And then a couple of nice spring onions. So you can pick some pickled ginger up in the supermarket. They're normally in a little jar or a small little pouch. And it doesn't make a big difference to the flavour. Now we're ready just to cook off the other oysters and put them onto the plate alongside. So I'm just going to make sure that there's not too much batter on each oyster. I'm going to try and let it hang for a second in that hot oil just before I let it go, and hopefully it doesn't stick to the bottom, just like that. And do the same for each of our oysters. I'm going to pop our Rockefeller under a very hot grill. Our final thing then is just our presentation. So the gaps that we have left in our plate, we're going to put our Rockefeller, then our nice crispy tempura. We're just going to stick it into that wild garlic aioli. And then we've got our wonderful wild garlic flowers we're going to put on top of those. And then our last little touch then, we'll just put some more wild garlic into the center. And there we have David Keen's Connemara oysters, beautiful trio. Tempura, sushi style, and the classic oysters Rockefeller. My favorite one is the sushi style. Oh my god, they're so good. Oh, try these at home. Don't be afraid of them. Oysters all the way from Connemara, just gorgeous. Finally get Susan into the shot. You wanna have your favorite one?
Yeah, tempura. Definitely my favorite. Gorgeous.